you getting ready to start a clinical trial site? First of all, congratulations. That's great news. There are a couple of things you should be thinking about before you get started. Number one, how are you going to maintain privacy? Is privacy going to be an issue you need to worry about? How are you setting up your organization to make sure you address that? Obviously, everyone's thought of HIPAA, but there's so much more because privacy comes in so many different variants and forms. There are a bunch of lawsuits, for example, about sending out emails. There are a bunch of lawsuits about sending out texts, and those all need to be reflected. So make sure your website, for example, is compliant. Think about corporate registrations. This surprises a lot of people. Yes, you need to create your company. However, you may need to register to do business in a different state. So for example, your company may be registered in Nevada, but you're doing business in Texas. Or you might be registered in Texas, but your site is actually in Virginia. The other organization as part of that is you may need to figure out what type of organization it needs to be. As a physician-owned organization, you can only have, if you're a doctor's office, basically, some states require that you be a professional corporation or professional LLC. So make sure that you follow those state rules as well. Other element you need to think about is the corporate practice of medicine doctrine. And this is actually surprising to a lot of people in clinical research. Most people will ignore it. I'm going to tell you that right now. From an enforcement standpoint, it's not high up on the enforcement ladder. However, from a practical legal viewpoint, engaging in clinical research is probably going to be problematic from a corporate practice of medicine standpoint if you have non-physician owners. There's a very easy fix to this. You essentially create what's called an MSO structure. You need to have clear marketing plans. Now, when I say marketing, I don't necessarily mean how do you market. There are ways to do that. There are people who do that and do that very, very well. I can connect you with them. I have resources as well. However, what I'm talking about is there are privacy components, which I mentioned previously, that go into reaching out. Where do you keep the information? What can you say? What can't you say? Who can you reach out to? All of those can come into play. I see a lot of sites saying, you know what, I'm going to use Filipino or Mexican or Costa Rican or Indian or Chinese resources. And there might be GDPR considerations. There might be HIPAA considerations. So those are just some of the elements I think about when I think about starting a clinical trial site. There are so many more, for example, physician recruiting, physician management, contracting with physicians that need to be considered as well. Reach out. I'd love to talk to you further.
Starting your own clinical research site and what that looks and feels like from the perspective of being an attorney. What would be, as I often get asked, the top 3 things I would tell someone to think about? You're going to want to look at market fit. This is no different than a product that you're offering. And the 2 main components of that market fit, contrary to what I think a lot of people would think about me being in compliance, are actually going to be, think about this, we're thinking, 1, most businesses fail because of either a lack of market fit, a lack of appropriate funding and runway to get to the customer and create the sales base they need, even if the product offering is really good. And the number 1 reason that clinical trials fail, which we know, is the lack of patient recruitment. So when you go in to do your market fit analysis and decide if this is for you, the first 2 things I want you to consider are exactly those. Do you have the money, the bandwidth, and the ability to create infrastructure and business and support it? And I would estimate much longer runways than what you're already thinking. Compliance gets featured in here as that 3rd item that you're considering because the more complex your operations, inherently the more complex your compliance, right? And similarly, the more complex your clinical research environment, the type of patient you're trying to reach, et cetera, the more complex your business need and funding environment, right? So it acts as a 3rd thing to consider as you look at that market fit. But realistically, if you're contemplating trying, I would think long and hard about this pre-step.
Planning to launch a clinical trial site overseas? Hi, I'm Edye, and I've got 3 must-know steps to help you get started. Number 1, conduct a feasibility study and register your site. When it comes to conducting a feasibility study, evaluate if your site can support the type of trials you want to attract. Think about patient demographics and the already available resources. Register your site with the local regulatory authority and get the necessary approvals. Number 2, set up infrastructure and partnerships, establish a legal business entity, and open local bank accounts for payments. Partner with local labs, pharmacies, and vendors to ensure smooth logistics and operations. Number 3, focus on data security and compliance. Implement systems that help meet local data privacy laws. For example, here in India where I practice, we have the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. In Europe, there's the GDPR. In US, there's HIPAA, which helps protect patient information. Develop standard operating procedures to handle audits, inspections, and record keeping effectively. Follow us for more tips.
Call, click, or email.